Thank you, everybody, for coming to the College Football Betting with Aaron Torres YouTube channel. If you could do me a quick favor, see that little subscribe button at the bottom of the screen. Go ahead, click that subscribe button. It helps our channel grow. It helps our audience grow. I appreciate it more than you know as we're talking college football on this channel year round. Appreciate your support. Click that subscribe button. Colorado hosting Oklahoma State. Now, it's worth noting this is a Black Friday game. It is a noon Eastern, 10 a.m. Mountain Time kickoff. So another early kickoff for Coach Prime and the Buffs. Colorado, a 16.5-point favorite over a team that was at the top 20 in the preseason. Over under set at 65.5. Let's talk Colorado for half a second because, listen, I think you could argue, listen, they're not, as far along as a program as Alabama, even with a first-year head coach in Kalen DeBoer. They're not as far along as Ole Miss. I think the loss on Saturday to Kansas was as disappointing as any loss, not just because you put yourself out of, or I don't want to say out of, Colorado fans don't get mad at me, but you're kind of in the back part of the Big 12 title conversation, but it was also the effort in that game. Okay. So by the way, for people who don't know kind of the standings and where things stand, Colorado now, basically there's 4 teams tied atop the Big 12 going into this weekend: Iowa State, BYU, Arizona State, and Colorado. Basically, Colorado loses essentially every tiebreaker and would really need 2 of those teams to lose to get back into the Big 12 title chase. So it was disappointing because you lose. But I think it was disappointing because it was really the first game all year, at least since the Nebraska game in week 2, where Colorado just showed up not ready to play. And listen, if I'm going to criticize Kalen DeBoer, if I'm going to criticize Lane Kiffin, got to criticize this team and this program as well for just not showing up in a position ready to play. You watch this game, it was unbelievable. First of all, and Brock Hewitt and Jason Benetti talked about it on the broadcast. Kansas put up 23 points in the first half, and it felt like they left a lot of points on the field. It was a weird game where they scored on the first 5 possessions, but they had to settle for 3 field goals, and it felt like it could have and should have been more. And then the second half comes out, and you basically cannot get Kansas off of the field, and they just completely controlled the clock in the second half. They only scored 14 points. They only had to score 14 points because they finished the game with 333 yards rushing, just rushing. 333 yards rushing, 6 yards per carry. The Devin Neal kid was unbelievable. 207 yards, 3 touchdowns. He was phenomenal, but I think it was just disappointing because we've seen Colorado. We know what they're capable of, and that was the frustrating part. We know what they're capable of. We know that they're better than that, and so to see that effort, I think was just a bummer. From the offensive perspective, listen, Shedeur did what he had to do, 265 yards, 3 passing. Travis Hunter had 2 more touchdowns in this game. But, Kansas kept everything in front of them, no really, really big deep balls. And then obviously Colorado is never going to run the ball a lot, but only 43 yards rushing on 12 carries. But I'm not going to blame Pat Shurmur, the offensive coordinator, because when you give up so many points so quickly, sometimes, you get behind the chains, you get behind the score, you got to pass the ball more. So Colorado was disappointing last week. Oklahoma State has been disappointing all year. Oklahoma State, I think you can argue, is maybe the most, they're right up there with Florida State, with USC, with whoever, as the most disappointing teams in all of college football this year, okay? Again, how about this? They didn't only start the season, as I said, in the top 20. They started 3-0, beat South Dakota State, Arkansas, Tulsa. Then they lose their Big 12 opener to Utah. That was the first game Cam Rising was out. And it has just been a train wreck ever since then, as they are now 0-8 in the Big 12 coming into this game. And the disappointing thing is the defense has just fallen off of a cliff. 42 points allowed to Kansas State, 38 to West Virginia, 38 to BYU, 38 to Baylor, 42 to Arizona State, 38 to TCU, 56 last week in a loss to Texas Tech. And so as we enter this game, how about this? Oklahoma State currently in the FBS, okay? They are currently 118th in points per game allowed, giving up 34 per game. And that number is a little bit deceptive because they only gave up 10 one week. And they've had moments where they didn't give up a lot of points, but 34 per game, that's worst in the Big 12 outside of Texas Tech. And I think more importantly, the offense just hasn't been very consistent. Obviously, Alan Bowman was the starter to start the season. I was never a huge Alan Bowman guy, but he's been out the last couple weeks. They've actually played a freshman the last few weeks who did not play terribly. And if you're looking for some type of silver lining, it was admittedly against a bad Texas Tech defense, but they did have 556 yards of total offense, 353 yards passing, 203 yards rushing in that game. Now, in terms of this game, in terms of my best bet, in terms of my pick, I know the number is huge, but I'll tell you what, I am going to go ahead and take Colorado minus 16 and a half. That is a monster number. But first of all, let's call a spade a spade. It's not that Colorado is incapable of putting up it's like that. I mean, remember, they beat Utah by 25 the other week. They beat Texas Tech by 14. They beat UCF by 27 earlier in the year. And so they can do what they got to do. I think it's also worth noting this is just a bad matchup for Oklahoma State. First of all, you're going on the road, freshman quarterback, and you're playing a defense that's going to be pissed off, okay? Colorado, to its credit, the defense we've talked about quite a bit is a much improved defense. But I think what's also significant about Colorado is Colorado has 20 total takeaways this year, 10 interceptions, 10 fumbles recovered. That stat of 20 total turnovers forced number 2 in the Big 12 behind only BYU. So you have a freshman quarterback going on the road for a team that has largely pretty much quit this season in Oklahoma State. And I think you also have a Colorado. Remember, they are the first team of those teams in that conversation for the Big 12 title that is playing this weekend. They play on Black Friday at noon Eastern. Iowa State does not play until Saturday night when they host Kansas State. BYU does not play until Saturday night late when they host Houston. And Arizona State does not play until Saturday when they host Arizona. So if you're Colorado, the pressure's kind of off. Like you win this game, you get to sit home on Saturday and see if there's carnage around you. All the pressure now goes to Iowa State, goes to Arizona State, goes to whatever. And so I think it's a bad matchup for Oklahoma State. I think they've given up on the season. You got to remember, traveling, road game, Black Friday. It's a 10 a.m. local time kickoff. I like Colorado to win. I like Colorado to cover. Give me Colorado 49-21. By the way, I think that over could probably hit as well. I'm going to stay away from that over in that game. That's just a little bit too much for me.